Hey, good afternoon. It is Sandy Schoelles and Jennifer Hynes to do we're here today to chill with you. And we've got some good stuff. So we're going to wait for people to join. We have a video and we have some articles. And you know what? I forgot to figure out how to get rid of that pop noise. There's a pop noise when people join. Hi, everybody. It's really annoying. I went into my settings and I couldn't find it. So everybody, you just have to understand. you know. So how are you, Jen?
I'm doing great. I'm self-incubating and what do they call it? Resting in place or something like that. So, yeah, I'm taking this quite seriously because, as all of you, I've been reading a lot of articles about this virus and
Yeah.
exactly how contagious it is and exactly how severe the people who are susceptible to this sort of thing are. And it does cause like a huge amount of concern.
Mhm.
I mean, don't you think?
Absolutely. Listen, we're going to get into this talk. It's not that I'm
Yeah,
paranoid or scared. I'm cautious. I don't feel so great.
right.
I've been dizzy. I've had a headache for 5 days, but I've also changed the medicine I'm in. And, but although I know he says, "Hi, Matt, snap, crackle, and pop." I don't know how to get rid of it. I went in, I'm going to have to sit my ass down, and really look at those settings. And there's another thing, too. Jennifer might have some green hair today. I cannot seem to
Oh,
get,
yes.
yeah, I can't seem to fix it's hilarious. I'm country internet here, and I'm trying to fix her screen. I've got control of it, so like it could go that way or it could go this way, and we could get the full picture up, but then she has completely green hair with the green screen
Uh,
technology, so it's kind of wild. And then mine, I always look like, they were just joking today, I always look like I have like all this we're really like for stoners. Say, if you're a stoner, you'll love our channel. So, good afternoon, Karen. We're going to show our video. People are joining, and that's great.
yeah, the video, you really knocked it out of the park. This is a
Yeah,
little bit of a different show. It's a show
yeah.
that people really need today. This is a show about chilling out and not too much about science. I mean, we may touch
Oh,
on
yeah.
some things because,
Yep.
but it's really about getting in touch with this whole process that everybody's going through, you know.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, I want to get ready to show it, because once I show it, I can share it on Facebook and not be doing all this stuff. It's kind of long. Again, it's, 10 minutes. But what it is it's sort of a semi, it's support for doomers. So I
Mhm.
guess you'll see it's called collapse for your head. So if you guys are ready, it looks like we've got people joining us. I don't know how many. It doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. It's quality over quantity, obviously. But I would love to have a great audience. But it's Sunday afternoon, and Uphill Media just went off. They had a nice long show, and it was really good, and I was really happy to be a part of it. Okay, guys,
Oh,
so
cool.
here we go. 10 minutes, we are going to be on the video, watching it, and take it off. Take it away. Solved. It can only be responded to. You respond to whatever calls you, however you feel called to respond. But you also recognize the limits of what you can do. That is what gives meaning to your extinction and to your living in present time.
I wrote an article a few years ago, you can Google it if you want, but I was really adamant about this, and it was called When Surrender Means Not Giving Up. There's a difference. And that's what Jenkinson means by how we fail matters. One of the fundamental principles of any rite of passage is to move with it instead of against it. In other words, when you're in a meltdown, your job is to melt down. Or as the Buddhists say, when you're falling, dive. And for a society, the same is true. A global crisis is an opportunity for a society or a species to explore the paradigm out of which it operates. And it happens that the paradigm of industrial civilization is phenomenally ego-based, ego-driven, ego-promoting. And again, I'll say this as often as I need to, the ego is a necessary partner in getting things done, but it must be a partner, not the emperor.
Stores are limiting hand sanitizer and germ-fighting supply purchases. Plus, the number of people diagnosed with the coronavirus is growing. And on Wall Street, U.S. stocks tumble.
There is a significant amount of angst and anxiety over this.
But Dr. Cheryl Bemmel says worry is the thief of joy and a setup for bigger health problems.
Worry can turn on a stress response. I think it's our nature to kind of jump to conclusions, and there's a lot of frenzy out there right now. And unfortunately, frenzy begets frenzy. And we know that the worry can be quite detrimental to not only our mental health, but our physical health as well.
Bemmel says some of the anxiety is linked to amplified information on social media, something she didn't see with the H1N1 outbreak. And some of that information is false. To calm your fears, she recommends reading information from the CDC and other reliable sources. But she says limit your intake on news consumption.
As the coronavirus pandemic continues to escalate, we are flooded with images that may be contributing to our anxiety. We watch as cities around the world are disinfected and get constant updates on the number of cases near and far. When we get away from the TV and internet, there isn't much relief. We are faced with closed offices and empty store shelves. We spoke to a therapist to find out how to deal with coronavirus anxiety.
So can you talk to me about what is at the core of our anxiety and how does this anxiety serve us?
So anxiety really is healthy and evolutionary, right? I mean, it is there to say you need to prepare, you need to watch out, and anxiety really precedes action. We would see like a tiger run the savannah or whatever, or we'd have a lack of food and, anxiety showed up to make sure that we acted and, protected ourselves from whatever that threat was. Now, in this instance, it's an interesting situation because we don't have enough information to really be able to assess how productive our anxiety is. We want to find somewhere between alarmism and nonchalance, and we don't know where that is because we don't have enough information, and there is a large degree of misinformation.
Because lots of people were writing about physical survival and how do we store food and how do we grow gardens and all of that wonderful information. And yet, I was asking myself as a former psychotherapist, how are people going to deal with this emotionally and spiritually?
Yes.
So that's when I began to write. I wrote Sacred Demise, Walking the Spiritual Path of Industrial Civilization's Collapse in 2008. And it's very poetic and still is today, a kind of mytho-poetic look at the whole subject. And I thought, well, it's too depressing. People aren't going to be interested. And it was more successful than I thought it would be. And then I went on to write Navigating the Coming Chaos, a handbook for inner transition. And from there, I just kept exploring in terms of the emotional and spiritual impact of collapse and how do we navigate it emotionally and spiritually, because it's going to have a huge impact on us in those areas of our lives as well as physically.
Do you think it was part of your own navigating of that, to sort of processing your own emotions, the writing process?
Yes, absolutely. I was a Jungian therapist and had been in Jungian therapy myself, and so I was really looking at that world, at the world and the situation from that perspective, and the wholeness of it, and how it affects every part of us. And I began to really wrestle with, how is this going to affect me, and what impact is it going to have on me emotionally and spiritually? Of course, I think most of us approach things from that perspective, and out of our hearts and our own experience, we're able to speak those things.
I see. I mean, since I've started talking about a near-term societal collapse, some people think it's a bit of an unhelpful term, as it's quite totalizing, and for some people they think it leaves no sense of agency or could even induce panic. I was wondering, given the fact you've been talking about this for over 10 years, how would you respond when you hear people say that it's an unhelpful framing?
Well, we can say that about a lot of things, but that doesn't change the fact that it's happening. And I think perhaps that response contains a bit of denial, that we really need to at least look at the what if, and go deeper with that, and ask ourselves if there's some meaning that we can find in the experience. And that's bottom line. What I'm writing about is, how do we find meaning and purpose in this?
Yes.
And that's the way I've been framing it.
So how do you frame is that how you frame the current crisis in your mind and heart, this quest for meaning, but is there more about the way you, through that thinking, what you've come up with?
Yeah, I hope not to be too long-winded here, but when we are facing climate catastrophe and we're facing the collapse of systems, we're looking at something that is much larger than a scientific reality. We're dealing with an existential issue. And, there are 5 things in life, I call them the big 5, that we can't deal with just intellectually. And those are love, death, eternity, the sacred, and suffering. Those are existential issues, all of which are wrapped in what we're dealing with right now.
We're already noticing an increase of anxiety and stress around the matter, but I think with increased introduction of self-isolation, we could also see people feeling a greater sense of low mood and depression. For people with pre-existent health conditions, there can be a spike in anxiety and stress and fear around what the implications of an infection could bring into their life. Very naturally, one may grow very concerned about falling ill and what implications that could have on themselves, on their loved ones.
And guys, here I am 1 year later, hanging out with my friends, playing acoustic traditional music. I am fiddling while Rome burns. Well, I'm playing harmonica while Rome burns. Guys, and when you cut to the chase, that's really, you might as well you know, you might as well fiddle while Rome burns.
Wow. I think Carolyn delivers great messages, and she is our elder, and I have a lot of respect for her. And it's because of Carolyn I met Jennifer, and we met in Colorado at a seminar that was a what, 3 days? 3 days?
Yeah, it was one of those seminars that was, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good. I just wish I could
Okay.
make you look better.
Oh,
Green
well,
hair.
this is how like the legend of the Green Witch, it's gonna be like yeah, it's crazy. Everything is like just a little bit different, so we just have to
I
accept it. But
fixed
this
it.
was like Sandy, like
Yeah.
2.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a resiliency seminar, and both of us were there, and we just became fast friends, and we spent a little bit of time together. And, we were so involved in
Yeah.
this climate crisis from the same point of view.
Yep.
There was just like so much room for, commonality and understanding. And,
What
so
a
it's been a
weekend.
friendship that I really cherished.
Yeah, cherish, and we've
Yeah.
already talked about what's going to happen when I get too old to be by myself, and if that happens. I mean,
You
I'm
know?
dizzy right now. I'm like super really dizzy, and guys, don't make a joke out of it. I'm dizzy, but I'm on a new medicine, and it might be causing it, or it was upped, because I have these problems and I'm trying to stop them. I know that I've gone from 0 to like what, 80 with these meds they're trying on me, but giving it the last
Mm.
try, the last try. So if
Oh,
either
man.
it's a side effect, or I'm going to say this, we watched the video, and we want to help each other, but I had a full blown panic attack yesterday. Full blown.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, I actually sat there because I use this medical marijuana vape, which I'm not using anymore, and I think it affects my breathing, right? So I don't know what happened, but
Oh, no.
I've had headaches for 5 days, and all of a sudden it just came on. I mean, I was sitting and doing some editing. I was in the lounge chair. My breathing's okay, but the thing was, it was a panic attack to where I wrote to my daughter and I'm like, everything's here, everything's there. My will is fucked. I have to update it. Sorry for my language. I haven't updated. I mean, I gave her the whole thing and I said, this could happen because it's exponentially
Oh, my
going up in New
God.
York State. My husband worked in a school. He had pneumonia. January 24th, he went to the doctor and was diagnosed and but he was sick for like a while and worked through it in the school. So who the hell knows? But we don't know. So I told her, I said, the most important thing is my 5 cats and that you don't split up Marty and Bella. Because I was freaking out. And you know what? I actually had to go take a medication to calm down. That's how bad it was. I haven't had it. So if I've had this, how many are having these feelings and
Oh,
overwhelming
yeah.
themselves by the news and by all the talk about it? I
Yeah.
got over it,
Yeah.
but I had to take, big pharma to get over it. And it was
Oh,
wild, Jennifer.
jeez.
My kid understood, though, she understood
Yeah,
because obviously I'm her
absolutely.
crazy
Oh, my
mother.
God.
Yeah. And
There's so much fear out there these days, and everything has just gone a tad too surreal. It's like the shelves are empty at the supermarkets, everybody's staying home. It's like we're engaged in this whole almost like worldwide process because a lot of people in other nations are acting the same way. So all of a sudden, you've got like all the population of Earth, and we're all just, a lot of us are just like focusing in on it. It feels kind of like a retreat, and some people will come out of it and have watched like a whole ton more sitcoms, right? And some people will come out of it,
kind of like,
right? I mean,
I
seriously,
have
you're
Golden
just going to
Girls.
do more of what you do. And it's like, but it's kind of like an opportunity, and there's like this wave to sort of comprehend things, because we're having like this group comprehension. So it's kind of like this 100th monkey energetic wave syndrome. We're all sort of like studying the same things, looking at the same things, thinking about life, thinking about death, thinking about philosophy, all this stuff, and so it's like we're on a massive retreat. Seriously,
It
right?
is. I'm telling you, we got Chris Foster over the sea. I think he's in Britain, right? Why does Jen look like Violet Beauregard? She looks beautiful. But I fixed her hair. It's not green now. I fixed the background, finally fiddling around with this, yay!
Yeah.
I fixed it.
So we're having a little bit strangeness, right? So we're having
Yes.
strangeness on a couple of different levels. I'd just like to acknowledge the strangeness. Okay, strangeness number one, the internet connection seems to be severely degraded. So we
I
have
think
like
so.
a very choppy sort of reception. And strangeness number two, I have like green hair.
Well, I actually changed it, but I'll tell you what, I
Oh,
could
did you?
wait, no, I could play with it and make it green. Watch.
Oh,
Okay,
God.
there it is. Oh, she's gone. Oh, okay, there's
Oh,
my
so
there's her
I
green
have
hair.
a coronavirus dragon. You want to see my coronavirus dragon?
Yeah,
He's
let's
like
see
my little
it.
friend. And
Your
does he
little
look a little bit
coronavirus.
different?
I can't even tell what it is.
Yeah.
I can't
Oh,
even tell what
really?
it is. Oh yeah, I see it now. I see it now. It's cute. Aw. See, we're chilling today,
He's kind of like
everybody.
my food dog. Fight
Your food
fight
dog.
the virus, right?
Yeah, well, we are chilling a bit today. We do have articles. We're going to get there. I'm just playing to make sure that maybe she doesn't have as green a hair as I can I can do. It's really weird. I pay a lot of money for this bullshit internet connection, and it's awful. It's just awful, and I don't know. My husband seems to think we can get this to stick in the TV for like $38 a month, and that's going to cover it all. And he's like out of his mind. It's never going to happen
Yeah.
where we're going to get any internet from any corporation that's going to let us have internet for $38 a month. No.
Well,
Sorry, I'm really still playing with your background because it looked kind of icky. Well, guys, we've got a lot of people with us. And I am going to close out some of these windows that I'm looking at, and I'll open them up if I need them. Hi, Alaric. He asked if anybody's volunteering to help low-wage, out-of-work people out here. Well, being that my husband is a low-wage, out-of-work person, we're not quite there, at all. But we have a lot of comments. Heidi said, I've been hearing about this time of scarcity since I was in the middle school in the 70s, and I'm still taken back by this. Well, that's our system. That's, our capitalism system. And
what comes to mind, Sandy, is how fragile this amazing little toy we call industrial civilization, such as it is, how fragile it is, right? You have one scare. I mean, this is going to happen again. We may recover from this, and I'm sure we will, because, but it's going to happen again and again and again. And this is a new cycle. We're just going to start getting used to this kind of strange periodic scarcity.
Well,
right?
What did Carolyn say? It was, this is not a drill, this is it. And well, is it? That's the thing. Is it? I'm just wondering. I don't know if it's it. I don't know if it's a drill or if there's even worse to come. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to live through this. I don't feel good. And I'm seriously not feeling good, but I honestly have to peg it on the medicine. And I guess if I just stop taking it, maybe I'll feel better. But, look, we preppers have been setting ourselves up for this potential scenario. That's Matt. Well, Matt, you are prepped. We're not to that degree, but Jennifer is. to a degree. She's really prepped. I'm prepped. We're prepped with so much toilet paper. It's not funny because we get it by the box. I've been telling everybody in all the comment sections everywhere. I order a case of that
Well,
and paper
I've
towels.
I've been giving myself permission, inner permission from my inner mother to dip into my catastrophe stores. So I've been dipping into my catastrophe toilet paper, my catastrophe this and that, because I basically needed some and I couldn't find
Yeah.
any at the store. So I'm like, oh, so that's why you've been doing all these crazy things all these years. I mean, there was reason for
Yeah,
it,
you've
you
got a
know?
whole stockpile, man. It's cool as shit.
I do.
Well, we are
I think
okay. We're only okay for
it's
2 months.
famine program. You know, it's my inner famine program, and I can't help it. It's like my body reacted. When my body reacts to intuitions, sometimes it's like utterly beyond my control. And I think
Right.
you understand how that goes. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I became obsessed. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to buy toilet paper and food and all this stuff. But that was actually some time ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd had them down there.
Wow. I loved it. How your system was set up was great. My system is a mess. you know, it's like I just have things everywhere, but hey, they're here and they're in the house and it's cool. So, oh, Denise is with us. Hi, you can't bomb a virus. This whole thing shows us how fragile we are as a species. It doesn't matter how advanced our society is, a virus, Mother Nature is more powerful than anything we can come up with. Hi, Denise. I'm so glad you're here. Oh,
That's
and guess
so
what? The guys
cool.
from the
Well
Reality
said.
Report are here. This
Oh,
is on.
cool.
I'm so happy. It makes me really happy to see all our friends here. We have good
Oh.
articles, but we really just wanted to have a chill day with the two girls, like we talk on the phone. And believe it or not, Jennifer and I talk about this stuff that we talk about
Yeah,
here.
we
We
do.
talk about what we've read
Yeah.
and
And
yeah.
Sandy is so freaking smart. You are like a synthesis machine. You know, you have like a lot of, I think women are especially prone to like this multi-banded perception where you can hold all these different pieces of
I don't know
information
how.
in your head and then you freaking synthesize it into this, and what's coming out of it, what I see for you, and I see your passion and your intelligence and your humor are these videos. I mean, they're brilliant, and I think we should have a whole little just video library playlist inside Environmental Coffee House just with these cool videos you've been putting
Thank
together
you.
because they are so interesting
Well,
and
it's a
fun.
distraction from
And
pain. They're driven by pain. And if
yeah.
I can distract myself, it's taken me 3 years, but I'm learning and also I'm I'm wanting to tell the story of things, and I want to learn how to tell the story through visual
Mhm.
means and audio means because I don't always
Mhm.
want to be in front, you know? I'm finding that it's a bit tedious and I have to go and come back and but I really like it, Jennifer. It's not something I could get out there
Mhm.
and say, "Well, I'm a video maker and I can get a job." Hi, Torstein. He's with us too. Hi, Torstein.
Oh, hi, Torsten.
This is
Good to
so
see
great.
you.
This is great. And well, let's see. This country's having a nervous breakdown. Well, I'm not having a nervous breakdown. I just have headaches every day. My thing is, and both of us, Jennifer and I, have talked. It is what it is. Now, again, I said I had a panic attack. That's irrational. It just came on. I freaked out because I needed my daughter to know what the hell to do because
Oh
it's
gosh.
true. I mean, I looked the numbers. I heard the numbers, and it was like it's exponential growth, like you said, Jennifer, and high risk and
Yeah.
being around,
And,
and who
and
the
and
hell
the thing of it
knows?
is, it doesn't
Yeah.
affect everybody badly, but what really bothers me is how easily contractible, how contagious, incredibly
Mm-hmm.
contagious. I mean, this thing is like engineered and it's got like barbs and it's so resilient and it's the way it's engineered you catch it really, really easily. So there's a high rate of infection. And that's why we're all, sheltering in place, whatever you want to call it, because we know that it's really, I mean, I myself am very prone to respiratory diseases. I've had pneumonia. I've had like all sorts of respiratory infections,
Damn,
and I'm
Jen.
like, hell,
Why?
yeah,
Why did
yeah,
that
yeah.
happen to you?
Oh, I've had all these things all
Oh,
my life. That's
shit.
kind of like my weak spot. I've had
Oh,
all kinds of
great.
respiratory congestion things. Yeah.
Great.
And the way this thing works is kind of disgusting, but it kind of, I think, suffocates you because it
It
forms this
does.
heavy wall of slime that basically mucus
I've been
inside of your
spitting
lungs.
a little
And
bit.
then
I think I'm
it
sick.
and it gets thick, and then it basically hardens and kind of like coalesces again. It's like this really nasty thing, and it just like goes all inside your
Oh,
lungs. I'm like,
Jesus.
hell no, I don't want that. I mean, I'm going to pay attention to this thing and really shelter in place, because I'm like, that thing is really, for me, it's not good. I
Listen,
know.
guys, we could be doing
Yeah.
this, could be my video diary of the end, because no, I'm seriously dizzy, and I've been spitting up globs of crap. But we live in a house with a wood stove, and this week particularly, the wood has been heavier, so one piece for me to put in pulls my neck, and that causes headaches too. And the it's a wetter wood, so even when you wait but you open the wood stove and some of the particles go in, that's also, see, I have so many things that could be. I'm not paranoid. I'm just saying, what if? What if? I've lived a long life.
Yeah.
My husband thinks we have it anyway because he had pneumonia and worked in a school, but we didn't give it to my parents, so how could he have had it? Hi, Brian. Brian from Head in the Box and Reality Report. Panic at the grocery store and risk
Hey,
for
Brian.
contracting C19. Still can't get alcohol at the grocery store pharmacies. Oh, I am so glad I had alcohol and mineral oil, and we've made our own I made my own sanitizer with alcohol and mineral oil. And, I have white vinegar, I have bleach, I have all the shit we need. I mean, we're fine for 2 months. If we don't, I don't have to go out, My husband's up in the woods right now, but that's where he lives. If he could live in the woods, he'd be in the woods. Torstein, he says, I'd love to see Eminem in the store in his latest video. No kidding. See, I don't know. So everybody's got something. Cindy's got an A+3 autoimmune disorder, so she's self-quarantining. And let's see, Heidi, what? Oh, she did a link. Okay. Oh, she says, here's a link to my post about the societal paradigm shifts that we might want to consider during this time. Great, Heidi. That's great stuff. And Brian just said, hi, Jennifer. Back to you. See, I'm starting to feel a little bit better. So maybe maybe the coffee. But the dizziness seems to be
Well,
going away. So that's good.
yeah, yeah. And it's so good to connect because we have so much bottled up inside, and there's a lot to process here. I mean, everybody in the United States is basically coming up against this, and we're basically facing our mortality and all of our fears head on. And, Carolyn talks a lot about this, and she talks a lot about deep grief that we
Yeah.
start to embody when we understand what's going on, and then that in itself is like a
Deep
huge
grief.
giant process.
I know.
Deep grief
Yeah.
to get through and to acknowledge. A lot of it like immediately goes into denial and all sorts of subterfuge and things like that, but we're all processing this together, so it's kind of like a group retreat because these thoughts are out there in the thought fields.
Absolutely.
And it's a
Absolutely.
time where we can kind of accelerate our own growth. I mean, that's what focus on, you become, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of us can focus on the latest sitcom. People are going to be watching a lot more TV, right? Or we can take this and really start to deepen our own selves while we educate ourselves about this horrible infection, pandemic that's
Oh, boy.
actually happening. But it's also a time of self-reflection and growth.
Self-reflection, which is what I've been doing a lot of. Oh my God. Have all of us out there been doing that? I mean, I have been watching videos, and we have a video. We have a couple of things to come up. Maybe we should start out our our
Yeah,
news
absolutely.
stuff because I don't want to be on there. I'm gonna get all right. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna close one thing. You know what I thought? Should I play the video from Caroline, that little clip? I did a clip of somebody else, or should we go right into the news? I think we were going to do the news first, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get with it. I think people would
Okay.
like to focus on some of these articles because
Okay.
they're really, really
And they're
interesting.
not corona.
Yeah.
Well, the first one is because we're going to follow up with the Mosaic project.
Next week, hopefully.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this article we're going to read today because it's about what's going on with them. So this one is what happened? Everything got all screwed up. Let me see if I can find my articles. Okay, coronavirus restriction, that's what we're going to look at. And
Okay.
I have to move all the comments and put this down a little and make it look good on the screen. And here we go. Let's see how it works. Okay, we're good to go. So I'm going to move our names. Sorry, everybody. I seem to talk when I'm doing all this stuff. Well, what this is, and Jennifer,
So
you can start it
what
out.
article is this?
This is
What
the
article is this? Is this the BBC News?
No, this is the restrictions force cancellation of Arctic research flights. This is the follow-up from the
Right.
Mosaic, and I wanted to start with that because we
Right.
did our thing. We did our thing on the Mosaic. Are you
Right.
Did you get it pulled up?
Well, it's not quite pulled up yet, so why don't
Okay.
you go ahead and get started on
I'll
it?
start. So there's the Mosaic. Well, this is an icebreaker, and the polar sterns in the background. On the frozen Arctic Sea, the Mosaic is a research expedition. So for those of you that don't know, but here we go. The organizers of a climate research expedition in the frozen Atlantic Ocean have canceled a series of research flights after the Norwegian government imposed travel restrictions as part of its efforts to fight the coronavirus. The flights, which were to have begun from Svalbard, a group of islands far north of mainland Norway, this month, already had been delayed when one participant tested positive for the virus while still in Germany. But late last week, Norway imposed new restrictions requiring that any non-resident entering the country be placed in quarantine for 2 weeks. These obstacles proved too logistically difficult to overcome. The highly unusual situation at the moment leaves us no choice, says Andreas Herber, an atmospheric scientist with the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany, which organized the expedition, he said in a statement. Dr. Herber, who's the coordinator of the airborne research efforts, said if other flights planned for this summer were able to go ahead, the institute would see if it were possible to fly to gather more data. So they are out there, and wow, it said see the whole thing, and it's not a big article. So I'll just read the last bit and we'll chat about it. The year-long expedition in the Arctic, known as Mosaic, is centered on a research icebreaker polar stern that has been drifting with the pack for the past 6 months. A rotating team of researchers and technicians is on board studying the ice, atmosphere, ocean, and other elements of the Central Arctic to better understand how climate change is affecting the region. And remember how I said I wrote a letter to them, and I don't think they wrote me back, or it's in my junk mail. I couldn't find it yet because there's always so much to do. But I asked them how how their research is going to be affected, especially with their baselines, right?
Right. And this article even continues after those videos that you were just showing us. And it's telling us about the part of the expedition that has been canceled.
Oh, I got it. Let me pull it back up. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. You can continue with it. I found it. All right, I
Okay.
got it. I thought
Okay,
the New York.
so this is the part of the expedition that's now canceled due to coronavirus. The flights, which would collect data on the atmosphere and sea ice thickness, were designed to complement the research happening at the surface. So this was the flight section, anything that happens in the air. The roughly 100 researchers and crew aboard the Polar Stern remain unaffected by the coronavirus outbreak. The next mission to bring a new team of researchers to the ship is scheduled for the next month, when other aircraft are able to make the trip from Svalbard and land on an ice runway built next to the Polar Stern. That's a gutsy thing to do, noting
Yeah,
how
is it?
the Arctic sea ice volume is going down so much, right?
Oh my God.
Wegener Institute officials said that those flights should still be possible unless Norway imposes even more drastic measures. The current restrictions would require that, in addition to testing negative for the virus, anyone going to the ship arrive in Svalbard early enough to wait out the quarantine. So they are keeping the Mosaic ship absolutely sterile. There is no possibility that those guys, can you imagine if you're like stuck in the ice and then coronavirus is loose on the
And it's
and
also,
like everybody gets taken down.
oh jeez, I don't even like to think about it. I'd rather be out there than here.
I know, and just yeah. So this is the guy. This is just finishing up. The spreading wave of infections poses an immense challenge for this international expedition, said Marcus Rex, a climate scientist and expedition leader. Our safety concept represents a consummate response to the current situation. That said, no one can predict how the situation will change over the next few months.
Wow.
So those guys are totally aware of the coronavirus outbreak.
Sure they are.
Keep themselves very isolated from that.
Unbelievable, but thank God they are. I'm so glad they are. I think about them. I hope they answer me, but everything's gonna change for them with their research now. And now it's gonna take more money, and they're probably going to have to expand it. Well, who knows what the end of this is going to be? Nobody does.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I feel
No.
shitty, and I'm not paranoid. I just don't like the way I feel. But Brian says he loves what series? Oh, they're talking about something else. I can't do that. Oh, Torstein. Torstein says, I'm pretty sure the Polarstein Mosaic expedition will be a COVID catastrophe by summer. They only test obviously sick people. Yeah, see, that's what I don't like around everywhere. If I wanted to call up and say I don't feel good and get a test, I don't know if I could. I don't think so. I haven't had a fever or anything. Well, Jen, we could move on to the BBC article. Let's go to the BBC article.
Yes.
And
absolutely
give it a shot.
Okay, so this is an article that came out in BBC News, March 19th, so just a couple of days ago, and it says coronavirus, air pollution, and CO2 fall rapidly as virus spreads. So we're finally going to be able to see as the particulates come out of the atmosphere. But that it doesn't unfortunately talk about, aerosol masking effect and global dimming. I've looked for those articles. I didn't find them.
No, it's
what
not
they say
easy.
is levels of air. I know, it's like so frustrating. I mean, I would think they'd have some results about the aerosol masking effect at this point, but I haven't seen any.
Well, I hope by next week we can find something.
Yeah. If anybody knows any articles about coronavirus,
environmentalcoffeehouse@gmail.com.
Yeah. So they say levels of air pollutants and warming gases over some cities and regions are showing significant drops as coronavirus impacts work and travel. Researchers in New York told the BBC their early results showed carbon monoxide, mainly from cars, had been reduced by nearly 50% compared
Wow.
with last year. Holy cow. I mean, that's significant, right?
I can't wait to
Yeah.
see the research
Emission.
for this.
I know. That's why I'm so anxious, because just when we stopped planes in, I think it was 2001 when the 9/11 attack happened. And remember, planes stopped for like
Yep.
3 or 4 days
Yeah,
or something. I
yeah.
mean,
Oh, yeah.
completely dead stopped. They were able to detect a significant change in the basically the evaporation due to global dimming effects changing due to particulates falling out of the atmosphere. The same is going to be happening here to some extent, because I mean, emissions are going way down. So it's going to be interesting what happens. Emissions of the planet heating gas, CO2, have also fallen sharply, but there are warnings levels could rise rapidly after the pandemic. With global economic activity ramping down as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, it is hardly surprising that emissions of a variety of gases related to energy and transport would be reduced. Scientists say that by May, when CO2 emissions are at their peak, thanks to the decomposition of leaves, the levels recorded might be at the lowest since the financial crisis over a decade ago. Yeah,
Wow.
way to get your CO2
Yeah,
rates
definitely.
down. Introduce
Wow.
the virus. We can't do it to save our lives, and because we've heard that climate change is bad, but just introduce a little virus and boom.
Boom.
Things that you
Oh,
thought were
boom.
impossible are
I
happening.
know. I wanted to pull
So
up
funny,
the
right?
okay. Do you want to continue or you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead. Right after that map,
Okay, you want to look at the map
which is a
between
very
China?
interesting map. The map
Yeah.
is very interesting. This is the decrease in nitrous oxide, I believe. Was that it, or were they? Yeah, not NO2 density. So the NO2 density decreased significantly as soon as they shut Wuhan and Beijing and all those cities. As soon as they shut them down and nobody was driving around anymore and industry stopped, check those nitrous oxide levels. They just basically dropped.
Wow.
So,
They did.
yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a lot of. I mean, the researchers that are, even though they're quarantined at home, they're going to be very excited about what they get to do. And I'm going to look at you and honestly say this: if the Trump administration doesn't stop arresting them. I don't have any articles about that, but it has to do with research in China, and I don't quote me. I don't know which university he was from. I can look it up. Ira Leifer? No, 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 no. I'll find the name of this professor that got arrested. It's insane stuff because I remember as a researcher, a research administrator, we had programs with China all the time because we were sharing data at that time. We should all be sharing and working together, and we're not. So it's kind of yuck, disgusting. We can't trust people. We can't, I don't know. It's just awful. Okay. We ready?
Yeah.
While in its early days, data collected in New York this week suggests that instructions to curb unnecessary travel are having significant impact. Travel levels in the city were estimated to be down 35% compared with a year ago. Emissions of carbon monoxide, mainly due to cars and trucks, have fallen by around 50% for a couple of days this week, according to researchers at Columbia. They have also found that there was a 5 to 10% drop in CO2 over New York and a solid drop in methane as well. New York had exceptionally high carbon monoxide numbers for the last year and a half. Oh, it just makes me sick thinking about breathing it all in. Said Professor Roysen Kamen from Columbia University, who carried out the New York air monitoring work. And this is the cleanest I have ever seen it. It is less than half of what we normally see in March. The animals, the squirrels, everybody, all the little critters in New York must be very happy in the city. Except
Yeah.
they're not getting the food droppings. That's another problem. Maybe they're going to starve to death because what
Right.
are they going to eat? All right, so although a number of caveats to these findings, they echo the environmental impacts connected to the virus outbreaks in China and Italy. An analysis carried out for the climate website Carbon Brief suggested that there had been a 25% drop in energy use and emissions in China over a 2-week period. This is likely to lead to an overall fall of about 1% in China's carbon emissions this year. 1%. Both China and northern Italy have also recorded significant falls in nitrogen dioxide, which is related to reduced car journeys and industrial activity. This gas is both a serious air pollutant and a powerful
Mm,
warming chemical. Oh, so look at that.
mm,
European
mm.
Space Agency satellite image. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, and I mistakenly said nitrous oxide. I think I meant to say nitrogen
Laughing gas.
dioxide.
We all
It'd
need a
be
little
like, great, have
nitrous.
all the nitrous oxide all over the
Yeah,
place.
we all need a
Nitrogen
little of
dioxide.
that. We all need a little of that. Okay.
Yeah,
So, all right. Facebook's still with us. I couldn't tell if the comments were coming. You want to keep going?
yeah. I think it's right after this little map, right?
Yeah. With aviation
With
grinding.
aviation grinding to a halt, millions of people working from home, which I certainly am, a range of emissions across many countries are likely to face the same downward path. With people working from home, while people working from home will likely increase the use of home heating and electricity, the curbing of commuting and general slowdown in economies will likely have an impact on overall emissions. I expect we will have the smallest increase in May to May peak CO2 that we've had in the Northern Hemisphere since 2009, so like 11 years ago,
Wow.
or even before. Yeah, so it's really kind of setting back our CO2 emissions a lot. This view is echoed by others in the field who believe that shutdown will impact CO2 levels for the whole of this year. It will
Wow.
depend on how long the pandemic lasts and how widespread the slowdown is in the economy, particularly in the US. But most likely, I think we will see something in the global emissions this year, said Professor Connie LeQuarrie from University of East Anglia. If
Oh.
this lasts another 3 or 4 months, certainly we will see some reduction. What's likely to make a major difference is the scale of carbon emissions and air pollution is how governments decide to re-stimulate their economies once the pandemic
Oh.
ceases, which is what we're talking about in
Yeah.
Congress right now.
Sure. And
Back in 2008-9,
Good.
after the global financial crash, carbon emissions shot up by 5% as a result of stimulus spending that boosted fossil fuel use.
Wow, there's more. I forgot.
Is there more?
Yeah.
Oh, your turn.
Oh, my turn. In the coming months, governments, well, it's good for me to use my lungs. In the coming months, governments will have a chance to alter that outcome. They could insist, for instance, that any bailout of airlines would be tied to far more stringent reductions in aviation emissions. Governments now have to be really cautious on how they re-stimulate their economies, mindful of not locking in fossil fuels again. That's the big thing. They should focus these things that are ready to go, that would lower emissions, like renovating buildings, putting in heat pumps and electric chargers. These are not complicated and can be done straight away. They are just waiting for financial incentives. However, some argue that if the pandemic goes on a long time, any stimulus would more likely focus on promoting any economic growth, regardless of the impact on the environment. Quote, I certainly think that climate could go on the back burner, and in this case, I don't think there is much hope that stimulus goes to clean energy, said, unquote, said Professor Glenn Peters from the Center for International Climate Research, which I have no idea who that is. Any stimulus will help those with job losses, such as tourism services. I think this is very different to the global financial crisis. The only silver linings that could be to learning new practices, to work remotely, and buying a few years of lower growth, allowing solar and wind to catch up a bit, though. These may be rather small silver linings. And boy, they've got 676 comments on this article.
Whew,
You want to look at some? That's
that's
kind of fun.
incredible.
Yeah, these are fun to
Yeah,
look at.
you want to take a peek and see what people are talking about?
Yeah, this one says, don't worry. I've noticed that one thing the supermarkets haven't run out of is wine. I've adopted a policy of always heading to the alcohol aisles whenever I can't find the foodstuffs I'm looking for. It works. A treat. That was like completely. Let's see if we can find the shrew. So many supermarkets with empty shelves, and there are so many arable fields that are empty as well. Time to really panic. Holy crap. Okay. Can you see these?
Yeah, I can.
You want to pick a couple? You see anything good?
Okay. Yeah, so this one from True Shrew, he says, I live quite close to busy main road and the difference in air quality is remarkable considering that it's just a reduction in car numbers. It would be even better if none were on the road at all.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Did you read Son of Sven Forkbeard?
The winter of 2000 and 2001 was really wet and was followed in March 2001 by, is that the one? By Foot and Mouth? So we
there he has Sven. I like this. Son of Sven Forkbeard. So many shops and supermarkets with empty shelves. That's certainly my experience. And there are so many arable fields that are empty as well.
Oh, yeah,
Time to really pack. Oh, you read that one, right?
Yeah, but that's okay. It's a good one because that. But I'm not.
It is a good one.
I don't feel like I'm panicking. I feel like more. I don't know. Like I said, I've been on goddamn isolation forever. So I mean, I've been in this house for a year, being paranoid about being followed by an insurance company, and it's pathetic. And I don't even care anymore to talk about talking about it. These people were horrible, and it's still going on. So it's still going on, and blah 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 blah. You know, life is life, and they're gonna.
Yeah.
These people are not nice, and they're probably taking a beating now anyway too. Maybe in the stock market. I don't know if a company that makes a $2 billion profit, you know, had to cut me, little old me, and I am old, and cut me off for capricious and arbitrary reasons. It sucks. So
so brutal.
Now we actually segue into something I hope will be positive in the future. Let's go to the I'll pull it up. Okay, we're going to go to Arctic today, which is one of our favorites. And you got it, Jennifer. Look at the picture. Suddenly, new investment in Arctic Alaska oil looks very unlikely. Let's have, if I can find my applause button. Should we have an applause for this? Okay. Yay!
So go.
All right. That's awesome. So go for it if you would like to.
So go ahead and get started with this because I'm just pulling it up right now.
All right, I'll get started. All right, the prospects for new oil development on the Arctic, Alaska, have been clouded by two powerful economic forces in recent weeks. A pushback by major lenders burnishing their sustainability credentials and a precipitous drop in the price of oil. The new financing and oil price hurdles come as the Trump administration is preparing to hold a lease sale in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And if there's anything that makes me want to puke worse, it's this. On the eastern side.
It's just horrendous.
My God, why? And you know what? this is, and people get mad at me, but this is the kind of thing that makes me feel like I just don't, politically, do you think the Democrats are going to do this in Arctic National Wildlife Refuge? I don't know if they would do it, but everybody's greedy. So, on the eastern side of the North Slope, and expand oil industry access to the National Petroleum Reserve on the western slope of the North Slope. Development that a growing number of banks and financial institutions have pledged their money will not support. I've got to do this again, because if the banks are doing this, good for them. Jen, you go.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
really need to go
I've
get
got
my
it up
neck
here.
brace, so I'm going to go. I'm going to put this up, and you continue. I'll be right back.
That's fine. The bank's commitments to withholding support for the new Arctic oil development has been sought by indigenous environmental groups campaigning against the ANWR, I guess that's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, oil drilling. Those groups have cited U.S. companies, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo in particular. Your recent decisions to refuse to finance any oil and gas projects in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge are major steps in protecting the people, land, and animals of this sacred place for generations to come, said an advertisement that groups ran in Sunday's Anchorage Daily News. Most recently, Switzerland's UBS announced that it will withhold financing for Arctic offshore oil projects, a policy that Bernadette Diemtief, executive director in the GWICH steering committee, and she hopes will extend to onshore Arctic projects. Diemtief said that she expects the Trump administration and its supporters to push ahead with the ANWR lease sale that they are promising this year. It's hard to say because they don't care. This is just about filling their pockets so they don't care what's at stake, she said. That's certainly true. She questions whether oil companies want to drill in the area, however. I don't know anybody who wants us to go up there, she said. If they do, we're going to be holding them accountable. The GWICH steering committee,
Sorry,
which
guys.
represents GWICH, can you hear me?
Yeah, it was me. Somehow a
Okay.
video went on. Okay, go for it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
how. I wasn't even here.
Oh, well, these things are all mysterious now. Which represents which Abbaskans, and there's like some hard words for me, in
Yeah.
northeastern Alaska and northwestern Canada, and its allied group continue to lobby banks and financial institutions to prevent lending for the development of Diemtief. Targeted companies now include insurance companies, she said. She and other development opponents are reaching out to those companies to explain the climate risks and related financial risks of operating in the coastal plain. It's so chaotic right now. You don't want to go there. Everything is just unpredictable right now. So that's kind of like a common theme on so many levels, right? I mean, she says everything's unpredictable and dissolving, and everything like that, chaotic. And we're experiencing the exact same thing with this coronavirus and with climate change. It seems like the whole thing on so many levels is just like dissolving and imploding, doesn't it?
It's yes, it does. It does. It really does. Oh, you want me to pick it up?
Oh, has it got more?
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
my.
go ahead. Go ahead.
We
Pick
have the
it up.
picture, and I've got my neck brace on now, and I think that'll help me,
Oh,
because I think
good.
that's what the problem
Oh,
was. As everybody knows, I'm
oh,
pretty
no.
much messed up. It's my spine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The
I
recent crash in
know.
oil
So sad.
prices, sparked by a price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia, may be even more significant to Arctic oil development than the lack of the bank financing, said Mushin Gutabi, an economist with the University of Alaska Anchorage Institute of Social and Economic Research. Probability is key in these circumstances. At the end of the day, if oil prices are high enough and oil prospects are attractive enough, I'm sure that Alaska will find investment. If prospects
Right.
become uneconomic, then that becomes a much bigger problem. Alaska Governor Mike Dunleavy has reacted angrily to the bank's decisions to withhold financing for Arctic oil development. He has vowed to try to sever relations between the state and banks with these policies because their people get paid by they get checks from the government, and they make a lot of money in
Yeah.
Alaska, and that's how they run their economy. As for the crash in oil prices, however, Dunleavy said at a March 9th conference, dismissed it as a momentary glitch, and he said he's confident that North Slope development will expand. Ugh. Alaska's oil industry and our conventional fields means that we're in oil for the long haul. Is he like disgusting? We have investment that's
It's so
in. It
gross,
is. Get him the fuck out of Alaska. All right, the state's still
you know.
into. They're very conservative. An increase in 200,000 to 300,000 barrels of oil a day over the next several years, he said. So the investment horizon in Alaska is much longer than other places, such as the lower 48 and the fields that are fracking that have fracking issues.
Ugh. I feel like just saying we are so fucked because these guys
Like
are
my video.
bound and determined. They're just bound and we're in it for the long haul. This is our plan. We're going to extract 200,000 to 300,000 barrels of oil a day. I mean, it's just like, well, that's pretty bad,
I
you
know.
know?
And it depresses me. The whole thing about Alaska depresses me, and their senator, she's another one. I have a brain fart right now. Lisa Murkowski, that's it. She's another one. I know they say that they're just, they don't care. They're planet eaters, and they don't care. There's other ways to find ways for their citizens to live other than on fossil fuel checks. But I'm not Alaskan. But then we should bring Jim Massa on, scientist that does his channel, Science with Jim Massa. He's
Yeah.
like a science teacher. Do you want to go on, or do you want me to go on?
Sure. The
Okay.
most
Thank
recent
you.
Yeah, okay. So the most recent Alaska Department of Revenue semi-annual forecast issued in December does not predict an increase in overall production in the next few years. The forecast said the average North Slope production through the current fiscal year has slumped to below 500,000 barrels a day. Why doesn't that feel like a small number? 500,000 barrels a day, it slumped to it. Oh, it's so sad, right?
Slump to.
Ugh. Well below the 2 million barrel per day peak hit in 1988. Oh, this is a vast improvement. North Slope production will continue to decline, averaging 490,500 barrels per day in fiscal 2021. So we're going to just ramp it back up, which starts on July 1st. Production will bottom. Oh, so it's slumping. Production will bottom out at 434,000 in fiscal 2024 before rising to 494. This is so wordy. 494,500 barrels per day in fiscal 2029. I'm like, too many numbers gag me. As new fields start operations, according to the forecast. Well, what I get from this is they're committed to extracting and then hence burning all this oil per day, regardless of what you say. They're in it for the long haul. Oh, God. In contrast to Dunleavy, some state lawmakers said they are very worried about the drop in oil prices.
This is really good.
You can
This
worry
is
all
really
you
good,
want.
though. This is a good article. It's newsy,
Yeah,
and we're covering what
it
we like
is.
to cover, and we like to cover this
Yeah,
because Sam
yeah,
Carana does, and very few people cover all of what we cover in being
it's true.
science geeks. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to read this whole thing, and I don't care about time today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel better
Okay,
now.
we'll
So
just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? We don't have to stick for an hour. This is a chill session. It's different. There
Chill
you go.
session
The
today.
drop in price chill session with the girls or
Yeah.
the gals or whatever you call us.
Gals.
The drop in price, oh no, let's not. The drop in price will hit the state budget hard, said Alexi Painter and Pat Pitty, analysts working on the legislator, said at March 11th hearings in the House Finance Committee. The reduced price will cost the state $300 million in current fiscal year and another $550 million in the coming fiscal year.
Wow.
Painter and Pitney said they expected prices for the Alaska North Slope crude to be about $40 a barrel through the coming fiscal year, much lower than the $59 a barrel forecast by the Department of Revenue in December and used by the DeLavy administration as the basis for its sublimated spending plan or submitted spending
Yeah.
plan. The low prices are likely to have impacts well beyond the coming year's budget, said State Representative Annie
Josephson.
Jobson. And thank you.
Okay.
Takes an HR person with all these words, an Anchorage Democrat. These depressed prices will have some impact on exploration and development unless the company's own expertise suggests that there's a brighter future, he said at the hearing.
Look at Conoco, Phillips,
It's all you heard.
Anchorage. I wonder how many people they're cutting 200 million in spending, so there will be job losses up there. But there's job losses everywhere. I wonder how much COVID's
Yeah.
up in Alaska. All
Yeah.
right. Action from some oil companies confirmed Josephson's prediction. ConocoPhillips announced March 18th that it's cutting its U.S. spending by 700 million, with 200 million of that cut slated for Alaska. The announcement by Alaska's top oil producer was made in a special presentation to investors by top corporate officials. The Alaska cutbacks will reduce drilling in the Cooperuk and Alpine areas of the western slope, which is good. Let's see. Max Fox said in Investor Call, the effect in Alaska will be a north slope production decline of about 2,000 barrels a day. So it's kind of like maybe they have to find, they really got to work on something else for their state. They really have to find something else for their state. And that's what people should have been doing forever. They should be doing
Yeah.
this. Not looking at this,
Yeah.
but looking for alternatives. Australia-based Oil Search, a new entrant into Alaska, that is working to develop the Pika project linked to the western North Slope's Nanushuk formation, is drastically cutting back spending. In light of recent material decline in oil prices and global circumstances, Oil Search's 2020 investment spending will decline by about 200 to 400 million, the company said in a statement released March 18th. For Alaska projects, early development activities such as laying down of gravel roads will be completed to comply with permitting obligations. So they're still going to cut into the wilderness. Oil Search's managing director said in a statement, further work, Pika work will be put on hold, Wolf said. So, as of March 18th, the price for the North Slope crude had fallen to that $23.91 a barrel. And, when you hear what they're going to put the roads in, that is such a, it just violates habitat and ecosystems up there, and it's just more of this. We'll never call a
Mm-hmm.
global climate emergency with these people in charge.
No. Well, essentially, we react from the very selfish, fearful, self-preservation part of us, and we, then it just kind of blows out at a cultural level, and this is what you end up getting at a corporate level. You've
Right.
got like the only thing that will appeal to us at this point is our selfishness or our fear. you know so
Selfishness or
sad.
our
I mean, I
fear.
don't mean all of us, but I'm
I
just
know what
saying
you
kind of
mean.
like the party line that's running.
Yeah. Well, we have one more article with it was
We
by
do.
Robert Hunziker, and then we have a couple of little
Oh,
clips
great.
from Charles Eisenstein if we wanted to introduce him, and Carolyn, what's her Mays? What was her name?
Yeah,
And
Carolyn Mace. Carolyn
yeah,
Mace. It's spelled Myss, but
okay.
it said Mace, and I have followed her for years. She's absolutely
She's
amazing.
spiritual, and we wanted this show to have some which we started out with the video so you could get a feel for somebody like Carolyn Baker and the work she's doing, and Jem Bendel had interviewed her from Deep Adaptation,
Mm.
but she's addressing coronavirus because she's been addressing collapse for so long. So we'll put those links up. So what do you think, Jen?
Hmm.
We're on an
I think
hour
that's great.
and 16
Yeah.
minutes. We can go to an hour 30.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we run with the Robert Hunsinger article, the IPCC's worst case scenario, because that's where we're at right now, and we'll
Okay.
try and, speed it up a little bit so we don't run into this time
Well,
constraint,
we're not doing that, Ben.
and
Everybody
then maybe
seems to
what
be
we could
happy.
do, yeah. And then maybe what we can do is we could publish the Carolyn Mace links and stuff like that in the
Okay.
show notes.
Okay, we can do that. Sure. Absolutely. All
Does
right,
that sound
guys.
good?
Yep. You
Since
ready
we
for
only have a
this?
few minutes left.
All right.
Yeah, ready
Mike
for
says no,
this.
okay. All right. So the Facebook people are still with us. All right.
Oh, they are?
Go ahead. You can start this one. I need a
Okay.
breath.
So this is we all love Robert Hunsinger. He's such a perceptive person and so well informed, and he's just got a really good he's an author in Counterpunch. And so we're going to read an article that just came out on March 18th, just a couple of days ago, called The IPCC's Worst Case Scenario. A recent landmark study of massive ice loss in Antarctica and Greenland fulfills the worst case prognosis as outlined by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. It is a nightmare come true as the impact of global warming on the planet's most significant, biggest masses of ice multiplied sixfold in only 30 years. We hear this again and again. It's exponential. What is it going to be like in another 30 years? It wasn't supposed to happen so unexpectedly, so suddenly. This is what you hear. Studies in the Journal of Nature conducted by an international team consisting of 89 climatologists reveals an unprecedented rate of ice melt at the planet's greatest ice masses. They assessed ice loss data from 11 satellites that monitored both Greenland and Antarctica over the past 30 years. Here's the horrifying truth. The combined rate of ice loss from Greenland and Antarctica averaged 89 billion tons per year in the 1990s. Yet, by the 2010s, if standing, please sit down. He's warning you. The average rate exploded to 523 billion tons per annum. That's a shocker. It's incontrovertible evidence that global heat is coming on strong, way too strong, especially for coastal dwellers.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you want to continue it?
Andrew Shepard, University of Leeds, and Eric Ivins of NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in California agree that the assessment is a clear sign of global heating at work. In their words, the satellite measurements provide prima facie, rather irrefutable evidence. And the source is ice loss in Antarctica and Greenland increased sixfold in the last 30 years from Life Science in March 2020. Didn't we? I think we might have covered that one. Therefore, hands down, with new data in hand, sea level rise of 2 feet plus over the course of the century looks like a done deal. But if it's already happening faster, 6 times, than scientists thought possible, what does that imply about tomorrow? Could the rate itself increase 8 times, 10 times more? Then what? The truth of the matter? Scientists' models have been off course, meaning way too conservative. Similar to the rampant stock market run to an unsustainable heights of recent, in contrast to expectations by a few smart hedge fund managers, global warming has blown apart analysis of the smartest and brightest. And based upon a series of recent studies demonstrating the onset of ecosystems collapsing, example, permafrost in the high Arctic collapsing 70 years ahead of expectations. And that source was Lewis Farquharson and all at Climate Change Drives Widespread and Rapid Thermokarst Development. Remember, we talked about thermokarst development in very cold permafrost in the Canadian high Arctic. And that was in Geophysical Research Letters. Well, it is likely that global warming has morphed into global heating. And Jennifer, now we're going to see what happens without all this, pollution that gives cooling that.
Right.
If so, then batten down the hatches, as it will soon become politically a necessity to force unified global efforts like the Marshall Plan to take steps to combat the biggest threat of all time. And people think it's corona. As such, powerful, clear evidence of anthropogenic impact on the climate system, well beyond the forces of nature, is beyond the scope of debate. After all, rising greenhouse emissions and rising temperatures run upwards in parallel fashion, nearly step by step, with a lag effect. And I'm handing it to you, girlfriend.
Meanwhile, all of the global proposals to combat climate catastrophe, one of the more interesting is the World War Zero, initiated by former Secretary of State John Kerry, former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and former Ohio Governor John Kasich. According to The Terminator, it's not a party issue at all, because there is no Democratic air or Republican air. We all breathe the same air. There's no Democratic water or Republican water. We all drink the same water. So don't fall for those tricks. It's not a political issue. They advocate net zero emissions as soon as humanly possible. Well, we're kind of getting there right now, just all staying home and saving the world, right? Along the way, they grandstand the obvious benefits of conversion from fossil fuels to renewable energy, or the onset of vast renaissance of global business with high-wage jobs galore, similar to the industrial renaissance of the early 20th century conversion from horse and buggy to gasoline-powered vehicles. Nonetheless, by all appearances, the planet's climate system has already been radically altered, more so than ever before, or at least as far back as ice core evidence of a couple of million years ago. Alas, the risk of major breakdown of ecosystems through the planet has never been so prevalent. In fact, it's already started. Greenland and Antarctica are clear, absolute proof. The overriding question is whether humanity will go to work to mitigate the catastrophe as much as humanly possible. After all, CO2 emissions and global temperatures have risen in lockstep, but what really counts in the final analysis is the actuality of physical responses, like the measured massive meltdown of the world's largest masses of ice. That's incontrovertible fact, yet almost unbelievable, but still a measure of harsh reality. Oh dear. And then he has a postscript at the end of the article. Postscript. 1 year ago, one of America's greatest climate scientists, Willy
Aw.
Brocker, affectionately known as the grandfather of climate science, passed away at the age of 87. He coined the term global warming and in 1984 warned the House of Representatives that urgent action was required to halt the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere because, in his words, the climate system could jump abruptly from one state to another with devastating effects. And that's exactly what we've been talking about. And it's like the flip. It's not like it's a smooth little thing. It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to happen. It's going to happen suddenly. It's going to happen abruptly. That's why it's called sudden, abrupt climate
Climate
change. And
change.
that is what we are engaged in right
Yeah.
now. And we're starting to see it in different ways, all of us.
You know, and people are. I'm going to end this. Then we won't read the other unless you want to read the. Should we read the James Lovelock one?
No,
Okay, we'll
it
go.
feels like we've done it.
We're done.
Right?
Um, it's people are talking about. Well, why can't we mobilize? You know, why can't the world take this whole panic and everything that they've done over this corona? Which, look, I could drop dead next week. So I'm not saying anything about maybe it's not right, it's not happening or whatever. But to mobilize for climate change would be epic. It would just be epic. And the climate mobilization, which I actually don't have their page pulled up, but maybe I could pull it up. The whole plan is there on the climate mobilization locally. Here, let me see. I got it locally, and I think I'll put them up just to show you that there are things, people, organizations awaking to, like they say here, waking up to the climate truth and get involved. We face a climate emergency, and you can get involved. You can help. You can put in your zip code. They've got all kinds of things that they talk about. They develop and pioneer climate mobilization, an all-out effort to deploy the strongest and most aggressive solutions. So this group they have it, and they've got it going. They really do. And they have news from March 17th, news from the climate mobilization and the climate emergency movement. I mean, so it's a good site. And I think that if everybody could learn about them, that our mission is to initiate a World War II scale mobilization to reverse global warming and the mass extinction of species in order to protect humanity and the natural world from climate catastrophe. We are an innovation lab that develops and launches policy frameworks, messaging, and organizing approaches to accelerate the global transition into emergency mode. And you know what, Jennifer? The government in the United States, they should have looked at the climate mobilizations plan. They really should have,
Yeah,
because their plan,
I know.
they have a plan, and it's comprehensive. So I think we've had a good conversation. We've put
Yeah,
in
I
some
think we did
support.
too. I think it was meaningful, and I think it
Yeah,
spanned many levels and covered a lot of things we're all thinking about.
maybe we'll close with the clip from Charles, but I don't know if
Yeah.
it'll work, but I could try. And we'll see. We've had wonderful people here. Um, Karen says, as Basil says, um, William Hoff breathing method for helping with anxiety and stress. Check it out. That's good. Okay, because we have been. That's really where we started. We wanted to be a comfort today. You know, yeah, I'm whining about I didn't feel when I was dizzy, but I put on my neck brace and all of a sudden the dizziness went away. So I guess that was part of the problem. But it's like, we're talking about our problems, but everybody out there, everybody that follows us, we all have issues. We all are either going to be broke, are broke, short of money. I mean, this is hitting us all. But we are a family here, and as long as we can do this, we'll do it and bring you the news that we bring, because it's different, right? We bring the We bring
Yeah.
the Arctic news, we bring the environmental news. And
Yep.
hopefully next week we can talk a little more about global dimming and what's going on, if there's more stuff out there, and find out who's studying it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm excited about what we've been talking about in these shows, Sandy, and I'm really enthused about where we're going with this and how we're kind of developing a great group of people around us as well.
And a great rapport, because I love you.
Yeah,
And you know,
and I love you too.
yes, and all of you. I mean, Gary and Kim and Brian and Ed and Book Hermit and Heidi and Mike and Jilly Love. Jilly Love. Jilly Love. You're my love. Oh, wait, let's see. What is this? Gary, Sandy was probably a pot overdose. There's no point to get depressed. It's a good thing. No, I didn't have a pot overdose. Me? Not an overdose. Brian Smith. Who else? We've got a good group. So thank you so much, everybody. And I have to see, I don't know what I'm going to end with yet. Probably just the little regular video. And what I'm going to do is the video that we prepared for this is going to go up on our website. I mean, on our channel and on our Facebook. And you can watch it because it's 10 minutes. You can watch it if you've missed it. I'm going to upload it all now. And Jennifer and I are planning a very special guest, by the way. And we're going to try to do this as soon as we can. And we all have open time because he is in London. And I'm not going to tell you his name because it's a surprise. All right? Jen, closing remarks?
Well, thanks for being here with us. You know, I mean, it wouldn't be that much fun if there were just a few people that we were talking to, but I feel great about the community that we're growing and our growing awareness together as we digest this information, take it on board, and transform and become more aware different people because of it.
Jilly, yeah. But Jilly says let's play the video as the closing. We're long enough anyway. So I'll play the video for closing. What the hell? We'll let it go.
Sounds good.
We'll let it go. I worked hard on it and we'll let it go. Peace, everybody. And we love you. And we will see you either maybe during this week if we can get this maybe Thursday night. And you know that our shows on the weekend are whenever we can do this. You know, it might not be good for us to not have a regular schedule, but life really gets in the way and we try. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And here we go. Oh, wow. Hi, Arthur. Welcome. There's a name that's new. Welcome, Arthur. And Jim, thank you for coming. Jim and Tanya, climate activists. You watch them every week. Every week he's out there. All right, guys. Here comes the video. Love you.
You respond to whatever calls you, however you feel called to respond. But you also recognize the limits of what you can do. That is what gives meaning to your extinction and to your living in present time. I wrote an article a few years ago, you can Google it if you want, but I was really adamant about this, and it was called When Surrender Means Not Giving Up. There's a difference. And that's what Jenkinson means by how we fail matters. One of the fundamental principles of any rite of passage is to move with it instead of against it. In other words, when you're in a meltdown, your job is to melt down. Or as the Buddhists say, when you're falling, dive. And for a society, the same is true. A global crisis is an opportunity for a society or a species to explore the paradigm out of which it operates. And it happens that the paradigm of industrial civilization is phenomenally ego-based, ego-driven, ego-promoting. And again, I'll say this as often as I need to, the ego is a necessary partner in getting things done, but it must be a partner, not the emperor.
Stores are limiting hand sanitizer and germ-fighting supply purchases. Plus, the number of people diagnosed with the coronavirus is growing. And on Wall Street, U.S. stocks tumble.
There is a significant amount of angst and anxiety over this.
But Dr. Cheryl Bimmel says worry is the thief of joy and a setup for bigger health problems.
Worry can turn on a stress response. I think it's our nature to kind of jump to conclusions, and there's a lot of frenzy out there right now. And unfortunately, frenzy begets frenzy. And we know that the worry can be quite detrimental to not only our mental health, but our physical health as well.
Bimmel says some of the anxiety is linked to amplified information on social media, something she didn't see with the H1N1 outbreak. And some of that information is false. To calm your fears, she recommends reading information from the CDC and other reliable sources. But she says limit your intake on news consumption.
As the coronavirus pandemic continues to escalate, we are flooded with images that may be contributing to our anxiety. We watch as cities around the world are disinfected and get constant updates on the number of cases near and far. When we get away from the TV and internet, there isn't much relief. We are faced with closed offices and empty store shelves. We spoke to a therapist to find out how to deal with coronavirus anxiety.
So can you talk to me about what is at the core of our anxiety and how does this anxiety serve us?
So anxiety really is healthy and evolutionary, right? I mean, it is there to say you need to prepare, you need to watch out, and anxiety really precedes action. We would see like a tiger run the savannah or whatever, or we'd have a lack of food and, anxiety showed up to make sure that we acted and, protected ourselves from whatever that threat was. Now, in this instance, it's an interesting situation because we don't have enough information to really be able to assess how productive our anxiety is. We want to find somewhere between alarmism and nonchalance, and we don't know where that is because we don't have enough information, and there is a large degree of misinformation.
Because lots of people were writing about physical survival and how do we store food and how do we grow gardens and all of that wonderful information. And yet, I was asking myself as a former psychotherapist, how are people going to deal with this emotionally and spiritually?
Yes.
That's when I began to write. I wrote Sacred Demise, Walking the Spiritual Path of Industrial Civilization's Collapse in 2008. And it's very poetic and still is today, a kind of mytho-poetic look at the whole subject. And I thought, well, it's too depressing. People aren't going to be interested. And it was more successful than I thought it would be. And then I went on to write Navigating the Coming Chaos, a handbook for inner transition. And from there, I just kept exploring in terms of the emotional and spiritual impact of collapse and how do we navigate it emotionally and spiritually, because it's going to have a huge impact on us in those areas of our lives as well as physically.
Do you think it was part of your own navigating of that, to sort of processing your own emotions, the writing process?
Yes, absolutely. I was a Jungian therapist and had been in Jungian therapy myself, and so I was really looking at that world and at the world and the situation from that perspective and the wholeness of it and how it affects every part of us. And I began to really wrestle with how is this going to affect me and what impact is it going to have on me emotionally and spiritually. Of course, I think most of us approach things from that perspective, and out of our hearts and our own experience, we're able to speak those things.
I see. I mean, since I've started talking about a near-term societal collapse, some people think it's a bit of an unhelpful term as it's quite totalizing, and for some people they think it leaves no sense of agency or could even induce panic. I was wondering, given the fact you've been talking about this for over 10 years, how would you respond when you hear people say that it's an unhelpful framing?
Well, we can say that about a lot of things, but that doesn't change the fact that it's happening. And I think perhaps that response is, contains a bit of denial. That we really need to at least look at the what if, and go deeper with that and ask ourselves if there's some meaning that we can find in the experience. And that's bottom line. What I'm writing about is how do we find meaning and purpose in this?
Yes.
And that's the way I've been framing it.
So how do you frame is that how you frame the current crisis in your mind and heart, this quest for meaning, but is there more about the way you, through that thinking, what you've come up with?
Yeah, I hope not to be too long-winded here, but when we are facing climate catastrophe and we're facing the collapse of systems, we're looking at something that is much larger than a scientific reality. We're dealing with an existential issue. And, there are 5 things in life, I call them the big 5, that we can't deal with just intellectually. And those are love, death, eternity, the sacred, and suffering. Those are existential issues, all of which are wrapped in what we're dealing with right now.
We're already noticing an increase of anxiety and stress around the matter, but I think with increased introduction of self-isolation, we could also see people feeling a greater sense of low mood and depression. For people with pre-existent health conditions, there can be a spike in anxiety and stress and fear around what the implications of an infection could bring into their life. Very naturally, one may grow very concerned about falling ill and what implications that could have on themselves, on their loved ones.
And guys, here I am 1 year later hanging out with my friends playing acoustic traditional music. I am fiddling while Rome burns. Well, I'm playing harmonica while Rome burns. Guys, and when you cut to the chase, that's really, you might as well. You might as well fiddle while Rome burns.